There are 3 videos I wanted to use clips from. About the history of the early online anti-feminist and MGTOW movement that I have always wanted to put together, so I can point to some patterns and explain why I am pro-censorship. I am basically sick of trying to explain to fence-sitters why censorship is needed if you are an advocate for any sort of cause. I consider myself an advocate for men. I do not really use the men's rights activist label, because the MRM is so crap. I do not consider myself MGTOW, as the label has gone to shit, and I believe men refusing to act collectively in their own self-interests is a typical male trait, and the MGTOW label has gone to shit as well. Anyway, let's hear Razorblade Candy talk about the time he ran anti-feminist forums.
Back in 2005 I started a website trying to explain this. A website geared towards exposing the flaws of feminism and many other gender-based flaws. The site was taken down in 2008 because apparently it was a hate site, or at least that's what my host told me when the site was closed. Maybe it was feminists that complained, or maybe it was all the other miscellaneous political topics of an incredibly politically incorrect nature that existed on my forum attached to the website. Who knows what aspect of the site made it a hate site? All I know is, I'm a free speech motherfucker, and when I open a forum, you guys can talk about anything you want. I am highly allergic to censorship. So I opened a forum, lots of talk of illegal immigration, banking, Federal Reserve, Jewish banking conspiracy, secret societies, all sorts of shit. I just took the different topics that were reoccurring and gave the topic its own sub-forum to keep it off the main forum. I let my audience choose the topics they wanted to talk about. So who knows what the real topic on what part of the site got the complaint that had my host terminated.
This is what happens when you are too tolerant. Razorblade Candy was very indulgent and accommodating to these right-wing conspiracy nut jobs, and it got his forum closed down. Even before his forum got taken down, it seems it got turned into a toxic self-marginalizing ghetto. Why show tolerance for people that make terrible allies, and are in fact harmful to the pro-male cause? This is a pattern I have seen play itself out countless times. The problem is the sane MRAs and MGTOWs are oblivious to it. They make useless empty appeals to free speech, and concerns about echo chambers. Every serious single online community has standards, and bans trolls and spammers. The people I want to ban are anti-male, and antithetical to any pro-male movement. It is for the sake of community growth and a healthy pro-male direction that these people need silencing and have to go. I believe in learning from history so men do not make the same mistakes, over and over again. I can understand the desperation for affinity with other men, and other anti-feminists, but that is a dead end. Pro-male men need to be more selective in who they associate with, and frankly censorship and banning is the tool they need to use for that end. Trying to make allies with anti-male, tradcon, right-wing, conspiracy nut jobs is a dead end. I will let RBK finish his story, and then play a clip from a Barbarossa video, where he reads a comment from someone who witnessed the emergence of the early MGTOW community.
At any rate, I never got that much traffic outside of spam, and my only real contribution was on gender theories. Point is, I looked for larger sites that I could be a part of, and never really found anything of any serious interest in those days. There were websites about fathers' rights, and like I said, the glorification of misogyny. But either I wasn't looking hard enough and using the right keywords, or men's rights activism was only a micro-fraction of what it is today. I really hope it's the latter. I really hope the reason I didn't find much back in those days is because our movement was that small, and this is a sign of just how big and fast we are growing.
And just for the sake of posterity, I want to post an alternate history from one of my own subscribers that does not agree with this narrative that Fedor Bogan put forth regarding the history and formation of men going their own way. And this is from a subscriber, and I know I'm going to pronounce the last name wrong, Joe Byrne, who claims to have been around during the same time Fedor Bogan claims the so-called founders of MGTOW invented it, and he paints a very different picture of how MGTOW actually came to be in comparison to Fedor Bogan's account. He says, quote, I had multiple Yahoo and WordPress pages. Back then, most of the time, we were just rage out forums. That's because we would get taken down in a heartbeat. Anytime we got out of line, we had guys like Ragnar, Rosh, and the old guy from Washington, PUAs using shaming tactics, the PUAs and MRAs telling us not to talk about female nature negatively, or about child support, or force, or absconding / going galt or aggression. The Make It Cost crowd was the first signs of MGTOW that included the idea of no marriage, absconding / self-survival, and running the bill up on Uncle Sam. I think the idea was just go underground, and MGTOW blossomed from that. And one thing I don't miss is all the death threats. Jesus Christ.
Death threats, tradcons telling early MGTOWs to shut up, trying to shut the discourse down. It seems the hostility from tradcons didn't start with AVFM doxing some MGTOWs a few years back. It goes back further. Anti-feminist tradcons have been our enemy from the start. So these types of people are not only derailers, they are actively anti-male. Let me assure you, these pro-marriage tradcons may pretend to be oblivious to the effects of marriage and divorce on men, but they are not. They know full well that marriage chews up men and destroys them. The tradcons just don't care, because they lack affinity with men, and are in fact anti-male. These people set up MGTOW, anti-feminist and fathers' rights groups, and then make it all about their pet obsessions. Mostly pro-marriage and biblical values dribble. They worm their way into MGTOW communities and try and sell marriage via the back door. They waffle on about choices, and call anyone who is anti-marriage an authoritarian, even though marriage is a positive right granted by the state, so abolishing state marriage doesn't fit the definition of authoritarian. Anyway, these people are hostile to MGTOW and male sovereignty, and because they are mental defects, who do not understand cause and effect. Their communities will never achieve anything, so they will desperately look for other communities to cannibalize. This is why I block, ban and censor anyone who I consider anti-male. If you try and sell or apologize for marriage, I will ban you. If you use anti-male shaming language, I will ban you. If you are an apologist for the right wing, and deliberately deny the role the right has played in no-fault divorce, alimony and child support, I will ban you. If you promote race realism, I will ban you. If you are a PUA, I will ban you. If I strongly suspect you being a tradcon, I will ban you. Tradcons are disingenuously wearing the MGTOW label, and the non-tradcon MGTOW are tolerating it, and allow them to invade their spaces. If you value free speech, over community boundaries and ideological direction, your communities will get overrun and submerged by mainstream thought narratives. Anyway, I will finish reading the comment, and I will let RBK finish out the video. As he sums up the problems of the early anti-feminist men's rights community perfectly.
Tradcons then would call us all sorts of things that outnumbered us dramatically. Agent Orange and Man-Woman Myth were the first video I saw, I believe that's what he was trying to say there, discussing male suicide and drinking. Agent Orange was a rage-out radical revolutionary. I kind of remember Angry Harry being the first guy to put an intellectual spin on the idea of men's rights. MGTOW took a long time to emerge. Its ideology was not popular with the PUA crowd or the MRM. If you ask me, MGTOW was the aggressive MRA severing from the MRM. I think it was more of a linguistic thing. We all started using a common language to identify ourselves as friend or foe, just so we could talk without interruption. We got sick of being told to calm down and man up and just comment nicely. And I think the claims of how MGTOW started are highly inflated. Well, he's referring to Fetal Bogan's claims here. It was more of a natural movement of like-minded guys. But you know, someone always wants to hijack any movement and say it started here. As I remember, MGTOW was just an awakening of like-minded guys gathering here and there, and then someone said MGTOW and it caught on. But it was the language that made MGTOW, the aggressive tone. So apparently there were, according to this account, a bunch of tradcons and concern trolls trying to tell the emergent proto-MGTOW community to stop bashing women. Fast forward a decade to the current MGTOW era, which is primarily, let's be honest, centered around here on YouTube. And boy, the more things change, the more they stay the same, don't they? Now,
as far as I can tell, Bible-thumping homophobic anti-Semitic conservatives, and possibly libertarians, formed this movement, the anti-feminist movement, for the purpose of getting women to follow the Bible, get out of the workforce, stop wearing pants like a man, and act submissive to their husbands the way the good Lord Jesus intended before the godless communist Jews corrupted them. It was heavily intertwined with the communist and Jew-hating John Birch Society and white nationalist rejects. You know what was talked about more than male victims of rape and domestic violence? I'll tell you, gays getting married, our boys being turned into sissies, and white women bedding down with Negroes. and how all of this was the result of a Jewish conspiracy against the Gentile. Jews invented communism, which hijacked our Gentile women, turning them against their men and telling them to racially mix and become lesbians. Abortion was a Jewish constructed invention to encourage the white race to kill off its babies. Never mind the fact it kills off more black babies than whites. Since I'm on the topic, white nationalists also claim Jews push drugs onto the whites to kill them off, except it kills off more blacks. But hey, reactionary fear-driven white Bible Belt conservatives pushing intelligent design in the schools need not look at facts. This is the right-wing extremism that this movement was so unfortunately built on. Thank God we've moved away from those disgusting routes and have actually become a legitimate movement for male human rights. Oh, and on the 1 in a million chance anyone is old enough and was around long enough to remember this, anyone here remember that weird and wonky religious freak that made a forum, and you had to pay money to post on his forum? He claimed it was to keep out spammers and trolls. He said you had to believe in God or you were a feminist. He also mentioned it didn't have to be Jesus, just some God, and he had this test on his website, some sort of Java applet thing, to determine if you were a feminist. It asks questions, you click on answers, and it had questions like animals are people, true or false, pirating software is okay, true or false, vegetarianism is good, true or false, believing in God is good, true or false, it's okay to be gay, true or false, and all this silly shit. And if you said, animals are people, or you don't have to believe in God, or it's okay to be gay, or a vegetarian, answer one thing wrong and you are a feminist. And he had this long ass post, called How to Tell If Your Landlord is a Feminist, and then went on to mention every normal and mundane thing his landlord did that upset him, therefore his landlord is a feminist. And if your landlord does even one of those things, he is a feminist. I swear he was worse than Mystery for real. He was a cuke, even for the anti-feminist community. People like Rocking Mystery and Bernard Chapin, if you can believe this, would have been the guys I hung out with back in those days, because they would have been sane, sober, rational people who got it. It's why I used to be fans of theirs. They were like the really awesome guys in the old movement, and I instantly clicked with them. Hey, that's just how backward right-wing extremist the old anti-feminist movement was, when Mystery would have been a progressive. So fuck the disgusting origins of this movement, which was so fear-driven, conspiracy-driven, and Bible-thumping reactionary, that I left for a great many of years before discovering Girl Rights Watch and the new breed of anti-feminist, appropriately calling themselves men's rights activists, not anti-feminists. No wonder it took so long for this movement to get off the ground. Every heartbroken father who had his life ripped apart by a divorce, and just wanted to see his kids, and join a father's rights forum or newsletter, had to be subjected to an endless barrage of Holocaust-denying, communist-hating, anti-Semitic, Bible-thumping. No wonder no sane, intelligent and decent person stuck around or wanted to be a part of that right-wing extremism. Every goddamn mental defect who couldn't hack it in the real world, or was chased out of mainstream politics, found themselves in the useless waste bin of the anti-feminist community. Then there was a ton of real misogyny, which wasn't really anti-feminism, just anti-woman. And I don't mean it had a negative philosophical view of women, I mean, just pointlessly mocking women for being weak, stupid, helpless, pathetic creatures. And oh, how these feminists were so cute trying to be men. And misogyny jokes like what does a toilet and a woman have in common? Without a hole in the middle they're both useless, and silly shit like that. That too somehow kinda sorta got intertwined with the anti-feminist community. Does anyone remember the site misogynycentral.com? And to be fair, there were some fathers' rights organizations, which, if memory serves me right, it was basically lawyer websites that asked for your money to help men fight for child custody or something. I have no idea if they were at all effective or if it was just some scam, and what few of these organizations had forums. You had to pay to be on their forum, and near the end, there were some helpful PUA/anti-feminist blogs, which I honestly believe that network of blogs developed into what is now MGTOW. There were PUAs and sex separatists, and they began kind of merging. It was the only area of the anti-feminist community that was intellectually productive, but the amount of material was rare. I tried to make a change many years ago. I built a website and message forum about fighting anti-feminism, and I forget the software I used. It was so long ago that software doesn't even exist anymore, and my forum became almost exclusively a place to cry about the Jewish banking conspiracy of the Federal Reserve System and how we have to bring back the gold standard. And then one day my forum and website went down for violation of the terms of service. Whether it be a butthurt feminist or someone who didn't like all the anti-Semitism, I don't know, but it was terminated and I had no backup of anything. Called it quits for many years. Fuck the disgusting right-wing extremist reactionaries that founded this movement. We have evolved into something decent and legit. And I say hell no, no going back. We can't move away fast enough from the disgusting bullshit. And I am not declaring we can't have libertarians in this movement, I am insisting it has to be kept separate. The men's rights movement has to be about men's rights, and not just one more little branch of the right wing. It, regardless of origins and similarities, must exist as a thing unto itself, with one unwavering goal: equal rights for men.